Well, 1 month into this crisis and without any timeline in place, many of you will be wondering how your finances will keep holding up. And to that, we have Kelley Keehn with us this morning. She's here to answer your questions throughout the day. So Kelley, nice to have you here. She's a personal finance educator and a consumer advocate for Financial Planning Canada. She is also the author of several books on personal finance, and she joins us this morning in Edmonton. So an early start for you. Thank you for all of that, Kelley.
My pleasure. Good morning, Michael.
Listen, I want to begin here with your thoughts about attitude, because here we have a lot of people worrying about money. And even before the economy was put into this tailspin by COVID-19, we know that people were struggling, some of them, living paycheck to paycheck. So what do you tell people who are panicked about how to get through this period?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great question, Michael. And you're right. There's so many surveys before this that 50% of Canadians were living paycheck to paycheck, that they were just a couple of $100 away from not being able to pay their bills. The organization I'm with, FP Canada, we also came out with a survey pre-COVID on money taboos, and that it's right up there as a subject with not talking about religion or politics or sex. So I think that the pandemic has absolutely forced Canadians to talk about money, to talk about it with their spouse, with their employer, with their bank. And we've not done that before. So there can be a lot of shame and embarrassment when it comes to money issues. It's one thing talking about money. Gosh, it seems like RSP season was forever ago, and it wasn't that long ago. But when there's a lack of money, Michael, it's a much different conversation, and it's really difficult to have. But it's really knowing that it's about getting through today. We will be on the other side of this. There are strategies, and we can talk about some of those this morning. But none of this is dire. It's being, prudent in the decisions that you're making, but it really is about looking after our health first and foremost. That's what our money is supposed to be there for.
Mm-hmm. And I guess part of the challenge here is that when people get overwhelmed, when they have this anxiety about money, oftentimes people just shut down, and that doesn't seem to be the right option if people want to get through this and see the light of day at the other end.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And we just don't know how to have these conversations. If you've never been in this situation before, talking with your employer about maybe getting your money sooner, talking with your landlord about deferring payments, getting on the phone with your bank. As we know, there was over 600,000 deferrals the Canadian Bankers Association reported up until last week. That number might even be different today, but that's intimidating, calling up your banker. By the way, I've talked to a lot of Canadians that said that their banks were actually very polite. They were actually wonderful to deal with. It was easy, but recognizing that a lot of people cannot do that, that even that is too much of a stress, that the pandemic is causing a cognitive capacity tax on our bandwidth, if you will, just like it is on our internet bandwidth. So making sure you have the right professionals on your side, like a nonprofit credit counselor if debt is just too much for you to deal with on your own, or someone like a certified financial planner that can help walk you through maybe some blind spots, help you with things that you haven't thought of, and even just help you come up with a plan, what to pay when, how to look at your investments, and last resort, like taking money out of your RRSP, or my goodness, having to resort on a payday loan. Definitely a big last resort there too.
Yeah, a good reminder that there is help out there, whether from books like authors, from authors like yourself, or paid advice, free advice that's out there. Okay, let's get to some questions right now, Kelley. Beginning here with a question that we get from Bruce O. And Bruce writes the following: can someone explain to me how this is possible? My wife was laid off from her job due to a shortage of work caused by the coronavirus, March 13, and applied for EI with her record of employment before the Canada Emergency Relief Benefit was announced. She has waited, he writes, more than 4 weeks, and her claim is still under review. Yet when CERB rolled out, people who applied got $4,000, two $2,000 payments within 2 days. So why is his wife waiting for EI while those who were waiting for CERB got it almost right away?
Bruce, that sounds absolutely horrible, and I can't even imagine what a wait that is. That does not sound right. That you've applied, that your wife applied before that cutoff. So the March 15th cutoff, if it was before then that you applied for EI, it would be processed through that payment channel. But those dollars should have been received already. So I definitely would get on the phone and see if you can get some help. Reach out offline too. I'll see if I can get you some help, but that should not be the case. Actually, in fact, Michael, we've been hearing over the last week and a half, people actually getting double payments, accidentally getting 2 CERB payments or an EI and a CERB payment. So definitely something is wrong with your wife's process there of that payment.
This is from Teresa Woodcock, and she writes the following. What can you do if you have mistakenly applied for the CERB, which is the Canada Emergency Relief Benefit, for a period of time that overlaps with income that's still coming in?
Right. So if you've accidentally applied and you've received money in that you shouldn't have, best to put that aside, Michael, and make sure that it's not spent in case the government comes back for it.
Okay, bringing another question. This is from Mike Silvaggio, and he writes the following. We are a family of 6. I supplement my regular 40-hour week income with a small business catering to bars and restaurants on the weekend, he writes. Given that the establishments are now all closed, would I be entitled to the CERB for my business? Note, my regular employment has not been affected. So his regular full-time job is still ongoing. His supplemental income has been affected. So does he qualify for the CERB?
No, the CRB is individual, and it is for 14 consecutive days that you have not received any income as a result of COVID-19. So he wants to maybe look into the government-backed loans that are happening. Not sure if it will apply to him or not, because you have to have a payroll of at least 50,000 up to $1 million. And a lot of restaurateurs and small businesses, unfortunately, maybe we're paying on a contract basis. So check with your bank to see if you do apply, if you are eligible for that, but not for the CERB.
Okay. Another question here. This one, someone who's written anonymously to us, but he writes, my wife and I purchased a townhouse as an investment. We are seniors and have only our CPP and OAS as income and also income from our rental unit. Our tenants have been laid off as a result of the COVID-19 crisis and have asked for rent relief. We've agreed to reduce their rent from $1,850 per month down to $650 per month, which is to cover the utilities. We have also arranged mortgage deferral with our bank. We are losing $1,200 per month at this point. Is there any provincial and or federal financial assistance available for us?
At this moment, it doesn't sound like it for that individual anonymous writing in. Certainly, that's wonderful that they were able to pass through that mortgage deferral to their renter. I'm sure their renter really appreciated that. And that's exactly what the government and the banks are hoping. Provincially, it depends what province they're in. Definitely dig into that, but it does not sound as yet. Lots of tweaks. We're waiting to hear what the Prime Minister has to say today if there's more tweaks happening with the CERB, because definitely this individual is without income because of COVID.
Yeah, absolutely, because as they say, they now, without this rental income, they only have CPP and OAS to live on. But you know, it's also interesting, not only are they giving a deferral to their renters, but they're also saying that they got a deferral on their mortgage with the bank. Let's talk a bit about that, because I think that is something a lot of people are thinking about right now, negotiating some type of deferral on their mortgage, but that's not as clear-cut as it would seem.
Right. So you really want to dig into what this means and what it means for you. Now, the big 6 banks announced this a number of weeks ago. The Canadian Bankers Association said there were 600,000 people have applied for a skip-a-payment or a mortgage deferral. So, Michael, when it comes to a skip-a-payment, that's pretty easy. You can go online. You can do that with your bank. It is 1 payment per year that you're able to defer as long as you're in good standing with your mortgage. That can really help put some money into your bank account, or at least have it not go out. The payment deferral is a little bit different. That's going to be interest upon interest. There's only one bank that has said that they aren't doing that they're actually going to forgive the interest on the deferrals.
And I think that's Van City, actually, in Vancouver, right?
Actually, National Bank, maybe Van City as well. So there are a few, but the other big banks, you need to understand that it is interest upon interest. So by all means, if you need to do what you need to do to get through this crisis, but if you don't need to defer your mortgage, this is not a forgiveness, it's a deferral, and you will have to pay it at the end. And then, like I said, that interest upon interest.
Yeah, and if you are paying your mortgage, surviving paycheck to paycheck in a regular basis without COVID-19, that's something to be wary of. Okay, let's bring another question. This is from Mustafa, and he writes the following. I am a small business owner. I was paid by my own company monthly wages. My company's revenue has declined more than 30%. If I want to use the small business wage subsidy for my employees, can I include myself as before, or is it only applicable for my other employees?
That is a really good question, and I don't think we have the specifics on that. That program has not been unrolled as yet. So as we see, just like with the CERB, until that came out, there was so many things that were still left unknown. So hopefully we see more direction this week and more specificity of who specifically will qualify for that, and if you as a business owner will be able to subsidize yourself.
More questions from our viewers, beginning with Delphine Brake. And this is her question. Is this a good time to retire, as I was planning to retire in June? How do I prepare for retirement during a COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, that is such an incredibly great question. It all depends. It depends on what she wants to do in her retirement, how much income she's going to need. So really underscores the importance of having a plan, seeing someone like a certified financial planner, making sure she hasn't left tax breaks on the table, that really she's looked at everything, because life expectancies are increasing. So I think it's always a good time to retire if you're ready to do that, but just make sure that you've looked at your finances and talked to a pro.
Okay. A question here from Matt. He writes, I'm a small business owner. If I am receiving late payments for work I completed in January and February, does that affect my income for this period and qualification for the Canada Emergency Relief Benefit?
This is such a tough question, and I've been getting a lot of these as well. So the language is very specific that you could not have received income for 14 consecutive days. Is this going to change this week? We heard Trudeau talk last week about, if you work 10 hours or less per week, that there will be some provisions and tweaks. So it's going to be a kind of depends. If this was money that was received previously and he's just getting it now, he should be okay if there's no other income that he's receiving in a 14-day window.
Okay, good answer there for Matt. Cami now in Nova Scotia. Cami writing the following. I own a micro small business in the arts, no employees, and I'm not eligible for the CERB or any provincial funding because I did not achieve the minimum $5,000 requirement, nor am I eligible for any loans. I have no other income, cannot receive EI benefits. Is there anything I can do, as the government seems to have forgotten about us?
Yeah, there unfortunately is hundreds of thousands of people that the government has acknowledged that they are slipping through the cracks. So the big push was to get money into people's hands that were working and that were affected. I'm very sorry to hear about her situation. The hope would be that there are more tweaks this week to CERB. There was a lot of calls from opposition that $5,000 limit just be scrapped entirely. Let's hope that for her sake that we do see some changes in the coming weeks.
I want to get your reaction. Ottawa going to be expanding the CERB. What do you think of what you heard from Janice?
Wonderful. It's much needed relief for so many Canadians that have been falling through the cracks. So we'll definitely be waiting to hear, as Janice was saying, what's going to be unveiled today. And I think, too, not just today, that's what's so important about tuning into programs like yours, Michael, is day by day things are changing and you want to make sure that you're getting the money that you need as it's becoming available. Yeah,
and what's also interesting is what Janice was saying, that the officials are saying you should be applying even if you don't qualify because things might change down the road. A bit of almost an operating advice going forward here.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it is changing every single day what's being said, what's not. So some people are getting double benefits. What do you do with that? I think it's just understanding as well that you will get a maximum, the maximum benefit for the CERB is only $8,000. So if you have received those double benefits, budget wisely, we've been told that as well, but it's very encouraging that there's going to be so much more expansion to eligibility for this program.
Yeah, so many people we've spoken or heard from this morning already saying, you know, their situations fall short of the criteria, so maybe they'll be helped out now. Let's get to some viewer questions right now, beginning with Linda Hardiman, and she writes the following: wondering how credit scores will be affected by the financial issues created by this pandemic.
Yes, that's a great question. I actually weighed in with Equifax a couple of weeks ago. So the short answer is it should not impact your credit score. The longer answer is that the two credit reporting agencies in Canada, Equifax and TransUnion, they are not the ones responsible for the accurate reporting. It is your lender. So if you're making any type of deferrals on your mortgage, your lines of credit, your credit card, please make sure you're either getting it in writing, or more realistically, you're going to have to do the note taking, who you talked to, the time you spoke to them, all the details. Email yourself, because it's unlikely you'll remember at the time or remember a couple of months later, but it should not affect your credit score. That being said, make sure you check your credit regularly with both TransUnion and Equifax. They both have free online reports right now, and do that probably about 30 days after you've made those agreements with your lender.
Okay. Only time for one more right now, although, of course, we're going to speak again later in the program. But this is from Pina Petrolo, and she says, I work for my husband and receive a weekly salary. I am EI exempt because I'm married to the owner. I'm still going to the office, but stop paying myself to preserve cash flow. In addition, 3 of 5 other employees are now on CERB. Most likely, the remaining 2 will be sent home in the next couple of weeks. She asks, am I eligible for the CERB?
If she is not receiving any income for 14 consecutive days and she earned at least $5,000 either in 2019 or in the last 12 months, yes, she would be eligible.
So many questions people are asking us right now. Beginning with Kimberly, she writes, my husband was laid off on March 27th and applied for EI the same day. On April the 8th, he received $2,000. On April the 10th, he filled out his EI and reported he had no income. Was that right, or was he supposed to report the $2,000? And does he continue to report every 2 weeks for EI?
Okay, so after March 15th, actually all EI applications are supposed to be going through the CERB. So they've received that one payment, everything, whatever, if you go to canada.ca, all of the instructions are there, but everything would now be funneled through the CERB program, not EI, after March 15th.
Okay, let's now bring in a question from Bill W. on Twitter. He's talking about registered retirement income funds. He says there's a 25% reduction on registered retirement income funds. Is this also applicable for federal locked-in RRSPs, or is there another method to help reduce the taxes on having to pull out some federal locked-in RRSPs?
Okay, that's a very specific question. So locked-in RRSPs that then actually go into LRIFs, those have not been discussed. That's old pension money that you were allowed to then put into your own RSP, but it's locked in. We have not heard anything on that, but yes, the RIF minimum payments have been reduced down, so you're not having to take as much out, although there are also provisions that you can put those payments into an in-kind account as well. So sounds really complex. Reach out to your certified financial planner if you are trying to navigate these payments, because all of this does make a difference to your bottom line with taxation.
Okay, next question has to do with mortgages. A lot of people talking about that right now. This one is about renewing a mortgage early. Natalie Hartford on Twitter says, my mortgage is up for renewal between now and August. With interest rates so low, is now the right time, or should I wait until things settle down a bit?
They're pretty much historically as low as they can get. Now, the banks don't have to go exactly in concert with the Bank of Canada. They can go up a bit, go down. So what she wants to do is reach out to her banker immediately, get a rate hold. So if she does decide to wait, she can get a hold on today's interest rate for 120 days and figure out, should she lock in, should she stay variable, very personal to her budget, but definitely call her bank to get that rate guarantee.
Okay, one more here from Paul Knox. I am a seasonal worker at a golf course, he writes, and collect EI during the winter months. My benefits have expired and the course is closed. What are my options now, he asks?
Yeah, so it sounds like if he's earned at least $5,000 over the last 12 months or in 2019, then definitely he should be looking at applying for the CERB.
Okay. Very little time, but I do want to ask you very quickly because someone else had a question about, getting loans from, for example, not a bank, but a money mart kind of company. What's your advice around that in this time, considering that people are very desperate to make ends meet?
Yeah, Michael, you're talking about a payday loan. This should be your absolute last resort. I get it that times are really tough, but please exhaust absolutely everything possible. Deferring your utilities, your property taxes, talking to your landlord. These loans can be up to 600% per year in interest and fees, and you have to pay it. So the interest on that is exorbitant, and it's not going to make your situation better down the road. So please do everything possible before you resort to those.
From Sabine Graham, she writes, what are the personal tax implications for the CERB?
Okay, so you will have to claim that as income like you would any other income. So you're going to, when you file your taxes in 2021, that will be taxed at your marginal tax rate.
Okay. A question now from Anthony Tambini, and I have to admit, the wording of this confuses me a little bit. Maybe it'll make more sense to you. He writes, I retire in 2 years. Will all these additions to the debt hurt my chances of receiving my pension?
Probably wondering if CPP will still be around. That is funded and protected very separately than the government debt, so should not affect him in that regard.
Okay. Another one from Sandra Stewart here, and she writes, I am a senior widow and I did not get any increase in my GST. Is that correct?
Shouldn't be. Maybe it didn't come in quite yet for her. Maybe she's not on direct deposit. I know some people have got it, some people haven't. So maybe she should just wait another couple of weeks.
Okay. One question here from Jim Quigley. Seniors, he writes, who are approaching 71 will be forced to convert their RRSPs to RRIFs at a very bad time when investment growth has been lost. Could this conversion be delayed?
Okay, so there's a little confusion about that as well. When you have an RSP, think of it kind of like a garage and you've got cars inside, stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Those may be very hurt right now. But when you're converting over to a RIF, all of those cars just go into the new garage. You're not having to sell them or get out of them or things of that sort. So that he should not be affected at all.
Okay, so it doesn't necessarily affect growth. The vehicle is just changing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
I want to, when we started earlier this morning, about 4 hours ago, I started by asking about the attitudes Canadians should be having towards all of this crisis in their personal finance. And I do want to touch upon that again, as this is the last time you and I will be speaking today. How should Canadians be approaching this? This is such a great time of anxiety for so many people about their money, making ends meet. What's your best advice as to how Canadians should be approaching this challenge?
Yeah, Michael, it's so true. People do not talk about money. It's the last taboo in our society. We talk about everything else. So opening up the lines of communication with your spouse, with your family. You don't have to reveal everything with your family, but letting them know your kids are probably stressed hearing mom and dad talk about this, and reaching out to professionals, a nonprofit credit counselor if you just don't know what to do with your debt, or a certified financial planner that can help you navigate if you need to sell investments or liquidate or do things of that sort. Make sure you're reaching out for help, because these seemingly very innocent things that you may be doing could actually have significant costs or tax implications down the road.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about people specifically who live paycheck to paycheck, because we know that is many Canadians really rely on that steady paycheck to make ends meet. Sometimes they go into overdraft to make ends meet, and the anxiety that they're feeling right now might actually lead them to almost ignore this and walk away and shut down. What do you say to those people?
Yeah, you make such a great point, Michael. It's not the time to do that. Talk to your creditors, get on the phone with your bank. It's incredibly hard, but by not doing anything, by not saying anything, number one, you're going to be hurting your credit score every single month if you're just ignoring bills and they're bouncing. It's going to cost you much more in the long term in fees and NSF charges. So please reach out. You'll be surprised that most lenders are willing to work with you. You're able to defer your utilities, figure out what your provincial and your municipal supports are. But this is a great time to really look at your finances and see what you can do.
Okay, you know, Kelley, thank you for this morning. It's been such a pleasure to speak with you and to get your advice on all these matters. Really, really appreciate your expertise.
Pleasure. Thanks it's nice to be with you, Michael. Thanks.